Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast for 19th January 2023. My name's Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Hi, Mark. It's Peter Ryan speaking. I am in Montreal, Quebec. Great to be with you today and great to be talking about a subject and a subject matter expert around which I'm hearing a lot about, whether it's on LinkedIn or with my clients right now. I'll let you tee it up.
Yeah, sure. Well, we're talking this week with Justin Custer, who's the CEO of ChatLingual. He's based over in Denver, in Colorado. And we talked a bit about chat messaging and the decline of voice. So, it's very interesting from the perspective of the kind of technology that's being used inside contact centers for the agents, but also just the way that customers are behaving. And I know that you commented a lot recently when we saw the news that Frontier decided to scrap all of their voice interactions and just go only for digital messaging.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And something that I've found out since then, Mark, is that there's a lot of other organizations that have taken on a very similar approach towards CX strategy. Now, what I can say is that Frontier was probably the most prominent case that we've seen in the last while. But in my own interactions as a consumer, as a customer, there's a lot of organizations that have decided that voice is probably not the best way to go. And they're looking to try and push as many people over to a digital interaction approach in order to manage what their issues might be. Now, there's no two ways about it. There is an increase in digital traffic going on. This just stands to reason with more and more people getting on different devices, with the perception that it's going to be easier and faster to interact digitally. I think that there is certainly a lot more willingness amongst the customer population to use this. The question I think a lot of us have is, what happens when you get a consumer? What happens when you get a customer that might not, for whatever reason, have access or the knowledge to one of these devices or the knowledge in terms of how to use it? Where do they stand in this? But I think what Justin's going to bring to the table is a very strong opinion and quite frankly, a very strong level of expertise around what can be done in terms of delivering the best possible digitally driven CX interactions.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of angles here, and Justin does go into quite some detail because, I mean, as you were saying, a lot of consumers find this more natural and easy nowadays. Anyway, if you're inside an app, you're using a shopping app or you're inside a game, it's actually much easier now just to click and go into a chat than to find a support phone number and go and make a phone call. A lot of the time, you don't want to leave the app or the process that you're engaged in. And the same applies to websites. If you've got that help button there that can go directly into a chat, then that makes the whole process much easier than the whole experience of phone calls. And there's a lot of other angles on the flip side for the companies that are doing this as well. I mean, voice support is expensive. You can only ever have one-on-one. Once you go digital, the agents can be handling multiple customers at the same time, and even doing it multilingually as well. If you put a translator on the text as well. So there's a lot of interesting angles.
There are so many interesting angles. And something else that I think we also have to recognize as consumers is that if you're using a digital interaction, like with a web chat, you've immediately got a hard copy. You've got, well, not a hard copy unless you print it out, but you've got a copy, you've got a transcription if you request it, and any credible organization will provide it. So you can actually go back with a record if you do have an issue with the organization with which you've been interacting. To my mind, the technology has gone leaps and bounds the last few years. I remember working on a project for an organization that specialized in web chat and the translation, the simultaneous translation from one language into another. And I just can't believe how we've seen leapfrogging. This just goes to show the extent to which the consumer base is willing to take on enthusiastically this option. And Mark, you made a point that I think is spot on. As a consumer now, I'm much more willing to hop onto some type of a chat functionality as opposed to sitting on hold on the telephone with horrible music and a recording every 30 seconds telling me about how my call is important to the company when clearly it's not.
Yeah, and I think that one other angle that may become important here is the potential for recession. if we are hitting an economic downturn and companies are going to be looking to cut costs, then this could be a great way to actually reduce costs, but also actually improve service at the same time. So I think you might be seeing some companies that were sort of unwilling to go down this path actually now sort of exploring it because there's no other option.
Well, why don't we find out a little bit more? If you want to tee up the interview, we can go straight to it.
Yeah, let's go straight to the conversation with Justin Custer at ChatLingual. Hi, Justin. It's great to get you on the podcast. Now, your company name, ChatLingual, I mean, it sort of shows right from the start that you're focused on both chat and languages. But how would you define customer service messaging today? I mean, we're looking a lot at digital service, but does digital mean more than just chat alone?
Hey, Mark. Excited to be here and really looking forward to the conversation. So thank you for having me. Yeah, in terms of the company name, right? We started with ChatLingual because we wanted, at least our name to be obvious in kind of the different areas that we're focused around with customer service. But you're right? As we start talking to our clients and especially their customers and understanding their customers' preferences and how their customers want to communicate with them, whether it's, good feedback or feedback for help troubleshooting issues they might have with the product or service. Customers are certainly looking to communicate in their channel of preference, right? Whether that's voice, which we see is absolutely probably one of the biggest channels in customer service today. Although with a shift into messaging, it's declining. Messaging is starting to pick up speed, and with messaging, yes, absolutely, chat is a popular channel. It's a nice channel because the client is able to have a lot of control over that experience. But what we also see customers looking for is email, WhatsApp, different social media sites like using Twitter or Twitter DM. So yes, our focus as a company isn't just chat, it's all digital channels.
Okay, and that moves us on from the kind of traditional customer service being only focused on voice. I mean, traditionally it's been kind of voice plus all the other channels, which sounds a bit like a sort of digital platform revolution. I mean, is this going to be about more than just the channels on offer to the customer, but also a big change in the kind of systems we see the agents needing to use to manage these digital channels?
It is. And I think it really follows the sort of progression of technology, right? If we go back to sort of, customer service a long time ago before we had phones, it was in person, right? Then we created the phone. Of course, voice was the go-to channel for a bunch of different reasons. You look at two different perspectives. One is, how do you provide the customer the experience that they want from your brand? And then two, how do you optimize your contact centers in a way that, helps you run and drive your business? And so with that, voice was the predominant channel for support simply because that's what existed at the time, right? I guess before that we had, written letters, right, that were sent back and forth through traditional mail. But chat, right, as call it late Web 1.0, the beginnings of Web 2.0, really came out in call it the late 90s. And we started to see a pretty rapid adoption of chat as a channel. But then, of course, as Facebook sort of became the maybe predominant social network, we saw companies start to adapt to providing support to their customers through Facebook, right? And the reason for that is because that's what their customers preferred. It's what they wanted. And so it was sort of this convergence of what's good for the contact center operations, right? And optimizing that. What do your customers want and what does technology enable? And so as we start to think about the future of technology, there's certainly a lot of hype and discussion around virtual reality. And so I would say, if virtual reality becomes a technology that's readily adopted by, consumers of, different products and services, and that's the channel through which they want to provide support, then I think that we should expect that companies will go to virtual reality as a channel for providing support. So yeah, those are kind of the three things that really come together to determine as a company, which channels do you want to offer your support to through for your customers, that support communication?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, talking about that kind of evolution from voice, it just reminds me that even just yesterday, I was talking to one of the bigger BPOs, and they were telling me that almost half of all their customer service interactions are still voice calls. So that's clearly the biggest part of their business. But is that what customers still need, or is it what they still want? I mean, what is the customer preference here? Are we still using voice just because that's how it's always been?
In part, are we just using voice because that's always how it's always been? The answer to that question is absolutely, right? Not in every case, but yes, it's change management, whether it's internal change for IT systems, internal change management of teaching and training new employees on how to do things, or change management and helping guide your customers into a new way of interacting with you. All of that takes sort of work and effort. And yeah, absolutely. The status quo is usually always the easiest path, so to speak. So, there are a number of reasons that voice is still today a, predominant mode of communication in rare circumstances, right? I think that there's either a demographic or there are specific use cases that make voice sort of the most optimal channel. But if you take a look at all of the other areas where voice is using, it's the status quo. I would say in some circumstances, it's actually a lack of understanding by the companies about what their customers want, right? And it's either that those companies haven't asked their customers, or they don't know how to assess that information. A couple examples for us, right? We've helped a few of our clients move completely off of voice onto digital channels. And in each of those circumstances, in working with the client, there was a lot of sort of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and moving through that process, right? The fear was, are our customers going to be upset? Are our CSAT scores going to decrease? Like, hey, we know that this is better from a operational perspective and it's better for our business. We think our clients want it, but we're not sure. And so we help take some steps with those clients to help make it easy, right? Kind of across the board. And then also to help gather the information they needed to assess whether or not that was the right decision beforehand and the right decision afterwards. And the results are quite remarkable, actually. In one of the cases, we're working with one of the largest telcos in Asia. The approach that they decided to take was no communication with their customers about the change. They just decided to completely turn off voice and to turn on chat and email as channels. And what they saw is they saw an increase in customer CSAT scores. In other words, customers basically said, wow, you've made chat very easy to access, and we actually prefer that as a channel of communicating over voice. And so that was a really big win for them. And another use case, what we did is the client was using a voice translation service. So they knew it was important to provide support to their customers in a language their customers could understand and felt comfortable communicating in. And so that user experience would be, a customer would call into a local number, of course, expecting to talk to somebody that spoke their language. Instead, they went through a IVR voice prompting process that said, in their language, hey, if you want to speak to us in Japanese, press 1. So at that point, they had a third-party interpreter on the call working with, an English-speaking agent that actually had the knowledge with the human interpreter in between. And it was just a fairly convoluted, uncomfortable, long process. And so when they moved away from, providing voice support in that way to providing support to their customers still in their native language, but via chat, that was another example of where, TNPS increased. And just really a great experience overall. And I think, if I was a company or a brand, what I would take away from is maybe two things. One, what do your customers really want? And then two, talk to a good business partner, technology partner about what that change management process can look like. And I think in both of the examples I've shared, that change management process was significantly easier than anybody on their teams had anticipated.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that about the expectation of the customer to get help immediately. I think that there's still this connection with voice calls as immediate help. If your flight is delayed or something and you need to know what's going on, you're not going to send a text message and then sit there waiting for an answer. But you sort of expect to be able to get on a call and get an agent and find out what's happening. Is it that if you can offer that same kind of immediate help just by clicking a button and entering a chat, then a lot of those problems go away?
It is that all those problems go away. If you look at what customers want, right, in terms of getting support, they kind of want it in this order. They want it to be as easy as possible, as simple as possible, and as fast as possible. And so, oftentimes with kind of that example, right? Hey, my flight is delayed. Put the life of a user in that journey is I'm sitting at the airport. I don't have information. I'm emotionally tied to this outcome that I was relying on, your airline service to help me achieve. What can I do? Like in that moment, what people want is they want to know that they're heard and that somebody is, actively, communicating with them and helping them resolve that issue. The channel for that, obviously there's a preference on, probably demographic, but I think we see that changing. I think we see, different demographics and ages of folks adopting different technology faster. So in that example, for an airline to be able to say, hey, yeah, we're here for you. Hey, Mark, we're sorry that your flight's delayed. My name is Justin. I'm your guy. I'm going to take care of you through this process. That's sort of the immediate response that customers want. Channel is relatively agnostic, right? And if you look at, at the airport, right, oftentimes they have customer service desks, and you can see a line of 200 people that were all on the same flight standing there. And today, what I see most of them doing is they're standing to wait to talk to a human person, in real life. But they're also probably on their phones trying to chat or trying to call as well. And their goal in all of those three channels is, how can I get somebody to address my concerns as fast as possible? And so actually, when moving away from voice support, which you have to, support customers in a serial manner, you can't support two customers at a time, in other words, and moving on to digital channels where you can actually support multiple customers at the same time, can help you drive up customer satisfaction scores and really provide a better experience through those channels.
Yeah, and there's a couple of points I'd like to ask you about there, but I think I'll start with this idea of synchronous and asynchronous messaging or support. Because like you're saying, for voice support, it's got to be serial. You've got to have that one-on-one agent to customer relationship. But something like WhatsApp, for example, if I'm just asking my airline, can you verify that I've got vegetarian food on my next flight? I don't need to sit there on hold waiting for an agent to get on that call and deal with my question. I can just fire off a message. And if it takes 10 minutes to answer, that's fine. I get the notification on my phone. So do you think that there's a sort of a shift? I mean, consumers are becoming smarter and learning about which are the kind of customer service requests that can be asynchronous or synchronous then?
So that's a great use case. And so I think the consumers already know, right? They already know, do I want support and engagement immediately? And the answer to that is generally yes. Now, there's a separate component to that of, hey, do I actually need my issue resolved in that same fashion or that same time frame? And the answer is generally like, no, it's not. And this is a great example. And where you actually create a negative customer experience is, just imagine that we're in a world where we love to multitask, right? We love to be able to do all sorts of different things at the same time. And the last thing that, customers want is to have to, sit on the phone to get a question like the one you just described answered. Like, hey, I have to sit in a queue for, 10 minutes just to wait to talk to an agent. So I've got, my phone that I have to be paying attention to or walking around with. I can't have other conversations or do different things because I'm focused on that, and then I have a 3-minute conversation with an agent. that verifies, hey, yep, absolutely, we've confirmed that your meal is vegetarian, Mark, and we look forward to you flying with us. Can I help you with anything else? It's like, you don't want to spend 13 minutes of your time waiting to get an answer to that question when you can spend 10 seconds, starting a chat conversation or sending a WhatsApp message and get the answer back in a couple of hours. Or even better, right? An instant response that says, hey, Mark, Justin here, got your message. Let me dig into that for you. I'll get back to you in the next 15 minutes or so while I help other customers as well. As a customer, meeting your expectations of like, oh, wow, this person responded immediately and said that they heard me. That makes me feel really good that this, company cares about, supporting me. Okay, cool. I got the answer to that question 15 minutes later. That's fine, because it didn't involve, me being engaged that entire time. So this is actually where, companies can make really smart decisions about how they handle queuing of different types of support requests and whether or not that's the type of request that needs to be supported synchronously or asynchronously. And so that's an example where, oftentimes we find clients have really good strategies. And it's often not that companies have bad strategies. It's that they aren't able to actually operationalize or implement the strategy that they wanted. And there are all sorts of different reasons that they haven't been able to do that. A big one is technology, for sure. But this, I think the one that you just described, Mark, is an example of maybe the finer points, so to speak, of that customer journey and being able to segregate support requests into the types that need asynchronous support or synchronous support.
Yeah. I mean, it still needs to be resolved, but it doesn't have to be immediately. Yeah. Okay. And just picking up on another point you mentioned there about how agents can handle multiple customers at the same time, compared to like on a voice interaction, it has to be one-on-one, and the agent is tied up with each customer as they're handling them. Whereas if you go digital and you use messaging, the agent can actually handle multiple customers at the same time. But I think that you mentioned briefly on top of that, the opportunity to go multilingual as well. I think it might be useful if you sort of explain maybe, how does that work? I mean, are you talking about chatbots being able to translate automatically, or is this live agents that are all working in English but can serve customers in many different languages?
Yeah, language is absolutely, one of our interests and passions here at ChatLingual. Language is interesting for us because it's been a challenge for humans for thousands of years, right? And today, most companies are really solving that challenge kind of the same way we did thousands of years ago. It's really one of two approaches. They're sort of ignoring the problem, and of course, missing out on the really big opportunity that comes with solving it. Or they're hiring humans to do that work, right? Humans with a very specific skill set of being able to speak multiple languages. And there are all sorts of different staffing and operational challenges that come with that approach of hiring bilingual speakers. In addition to it generally being a lot more expensive than hiring English speakers. So I think we're in a really interesting time right now, because in the past, I don't know, 5 to 7 years or so, it's become viable. We actually have the technology to start to solve those customer service challenges using computers instead of people. And so, as you start to think about, hey, what are those things that customers want? And earlier I had said it's to be supported sort of as easily, as simply and as fast as possible. But what the fourth pillar of that is customers also want personalized support. That's really important, right? To engaging with a brand and having loyalty. And the baseline for personalized support is communicating in a language that you, one, at least understand, but two, probably feel comfortable speaking in your native language. That's how you want to communicate with, the company selling the products and services that you're consuming. So language is table stakes. And what we do is we provide sort of the technology and services to our clients to help them communicate with their customers across any language, using English-speaking agents. And chatbots are a really big part of our strategy. I think chatbots are important. I think they can actually enhance the customer experience when done the right way. Although, I think that chatbots are still relatively new-ish from a technology perspective, and they're not often implemented as well as any of us would like. Now, we have some perspectives and opinions on that, and almost all of our clients today do leverage chatbots. And yeah, we would encourage you, hey, if you're going to launch a chatbot, launch that chatbot in all of the languages that your customers communicate in. Technology has made that easy to do. And then, of course, you have to think about the user journey. Hey, when a chatbot isn't actually able to handle the customer's question, right? You're going to, pass that conversation from the chatbot to one of your, human agents. And of course, that human agent is going to need to continue that conversation in the same language that the customer is communicating in to begin with. And so, the technology is there for us now to provide that level of experience in the customer service world.
Yeah, that's interesting. And talking about the customer service world, I mean, there is a very traditional set of metrics where success is often judged. And, these have come out of the kind of voice model, things like average handle time, first call resolution. We all know these metrics from the contact center environment. But how does that work when we're talking about digital messaging? Because if I talk to an airline and I have an exchange on WhatsApp of 9 messages across 2 hours, and then it's finally resolved, I mean, does that look good or bad? Or how do you measure that? Is it better than a customer waiting 2 hours to be served on a voice call?
That's a fantastic question, right? You mentioned average handle time, and average handle time is, one of the really core key performance indicators that most contact centers use today to measure success. And average handle time in particular, it's really a relic of voice. And it was created for voice because with voice, as we mentioned earlier, you have to support customers in serial. You can't support multiple customers at the same time. But with the technology that we have today around automation, around chatbots, around messaging and asynchronous messaging, average handle time isn't the right metric to use to assess your customer satisfaction scores. And you kind of alluded to it there with an example of, hey, what would you prefer as a customer? You send 9 messages over, an asynchronous messaging solution like WhatsApp over the course of 2 hours, and you get your issue resolved. But during those 2 hours, you're able to multitask and do whatever you want. And, maybe that's, I don't know, you're out on Saturday having lunch with the family at the beach while, taking care of, a couple of chores that you needed to do. So are you happier with that experience, or, having to wait 2 hours and, maybe sit on the phone call for 13 minutes in order to get your question answered? So yes, contact center operators should think about 2 things. How do they improve the customer experience, and how do they optimize their contact center operations? Now, average handle time may actually be really important from a customer satisfaction perspective, but when technology is implemented the right way, it's probably no longer the right metric to use to measure the productivity of your contact center. Instead, I would encourage you to think about what are the number of customers that you can effectively support in a given amount of time. Hey, if this month 10 agents are able to support 100 customers, and next month, because of new automation that you've implemented, 10 agents are able to support 200 customers, that's a significant improvement. Even if you were to take a look at average handle time during that time could actually increase. But in terms of measuring the results, that's where having the right surveys in place or the right engagement with your customers can really help you assess, hey, how happy are our customers with the solutions we've implemented?
Yeah. And I was thinking also, how happy are the employees inside the company? Because you've talked a lot about the simplicity for the customer, being able to click on a button to get help immediately, or really easily finding help from a homepage. But does this simplicity translate across to inside the contact center? I mean, the agents that are answering these messaging requests, is there some sort of platform simplicity that's creating more value in addition to what the customers are seeing?
There absolutely should be, right? I mean, if you believe that your employees are your most valuable asset, you should certainly be focused on how you can, ensure their happiness. In my experience in working with customer service agents, Customer service agents take that job for a number of reasons, but in general, which is not always the case, I find that most customer service agents are actually, pretty excited about supporting customers. And what I like to say is, hey, they have really big hearts. But if you understand the technology stack that they often are forced to work with, companies make their jobs really, really hard. As an example, a major telco in Europe is one of our clients, and we're working with an area of their company where a customer service agent might need to access up to 18 different applications during the course of their day in order to answer customer questions. So, here's this person who really wants to focus on supporting the customer and engage with the customer. And I would say, if you were to assess the, percentage of their time communicating with customers, doing all of this other ancillary work, it's probably 80-20. They're spending 20% of their time actually communicating with the customers and 80% sifting through 18 different applications in order to find the information they need or to copy and paste information back and forth into different systems for reporting perspectives. One, companies should really want to focus on optimizing their agent experience. They want to do that for a couple of reasons. One, it will probably make their agents a whole lot more productive. Which generally means, hey, you can, respond to more customers with fewer number of people. That's generally good for business, right? The bottom line. But then two, you're going to have happier agents. Agents are going to stick around longer. You're going to have reduced retention. And also with happier agents, right, the theory is certainly, hey, you're going to have happier customers. Agents are more engaged and more attentive to be able to, support their customers with the level of empathy that their customers need, rather than the agents being frustrated with their own internal processes.
Yeah, and this is something that we talked about last year on the podcast with McKinsey. There's often a strategic vision of how multi-channel customer support should work. But then that vision is set up as a PowerPoint and a project plan, and then there's the reality of what's delivered. I mean, is that something that you've come across? Given that you're talking about quite modern digital channels, are you seeing a difficulty between, or a divergence between what people want to deliver and what they end up being able to deliver?
Mark, we come across that all the time. When we take a look at our portfolio of clients, we have some clients that they were able to execute their strategy. And when I look at the leadership that they have in place, and the collaboration between their teammates and their colleagues, the curiosity that their colleagues have, their openness to trying and testing new things, there's certainly a cultural element within companies that leads to a better customer service support operations. Oftentimes we work with very large companies. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There are a lot of stakeholders. The stakeholders have different perspectives on what's important. There's often a lot of sunk cost or perceived sunk cost that go into the decision-making process that clients have. We have a client we're working with. We're in the middle of a project with them right now. They're in the financial services space, and that's absolutely what we're seeing, right? They have a new leader who's come in who has a vision, right? He's got the PowerPoint from McKinsey that says, hey, I understand the direction that we need to take the company in order to support the scale that we see in the next few years. And he's coming into an organization of folks that have already built, a very complex solution. And they built that solution that they had without, the foresight to understand how that would scale. And yeah, there's a lot of, call it political turmoil that has to be overcome. And so it's sort of, sometimes it's one step back, two steps forward, one step back, two steps forward, three steps back. It takes a lot of time to, steer a ship and get folks on board with a new plan and change, especially when that is inherent in the culture that exists. So yes, it's really a mix of companies. And that's why, consulting firms tend to continue to add value and continue to add value repetitiously. Hey, we set this strategy a year ago and, we left you to go implement it. And now we're back a year later and we're going to pitch you the same strategy again and hope you can make some changes with the implementation this time to get a step closer to seeing that come to fruition.
Yeah, that incremental consulting sounds like a good business model. Yeah. Well, I mean, let's just wrap up then. I mean, where do we go from here? I mean, we've talked about a lot of different aspects of digital CX and digital messaging, but what do you think will be the most noticeable changes in this area for messaging, especially as we head further into the year? I mean, we're still in January, so I guess I'm sort of asking you to look ahead to 2023.
As we look through 2023, obviously we've got this, global macroeconomic recession, or quote unquote recession, that's looming, and it's certainly making companies uneasy, and companies are really focused on reducing costs. Hey, how do we reduce, our burden, so to speak, or our expenses? And so what I see for 2023 is that reducing costs is going to be the driver for decision making. And, as you start to look at a landscape of different technology, voice is one of the most expensive channels to support out there, because one person can only support, one person at a time. So I think that we will see an acceleration of companies moving off of voice onto digital channels, where agents can support multiple customers at the same time. And I actually think that's going to benefit everybody. I think that's going to benefit the companies and their bottom line. And I think that's actually going to help drive a better customer experience, for better customer engagement and higher customer loyalty. We certainly see, I had alluded to, the fact that in the past 5 to 7 years or so, it's become viable to start to solve, multilingual challenges using computers instead of people. And I think as we start to see a focus on cost reduction, we're also going to see companies start to look at where they can reduce costs and, taking the risk, so to speak, on letting computers solve that challenge instead of people. I think we will see those decisions accelerate. A thesis that we have as a company is 10 years from now, what we're doing is going to be the status quo. Right now, we're still early, right, in the technology adoption. But we think for 2023, we're going to see that accelerate. I hope that what we see is customers start to listen to their customers more. Pay attention to your customers, help your customers guide, where you should be communicating with them and engaging them.
All right, Justin, that's a fantastic look and a really positive look ahead to the year. So let's wrap up there. Thank you very much.
Mark, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it, and look forward to connecting again.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.